Black virgin forced to a fixed marriage with a cruel CEO. What happened on their wedding night left her in tears. As midnight approached and guests began to leave, Lucas's mask finally slipped. He leaned close again, but this time his words made her blood run cold. What would you do if your family's survival depended on marrying a stranger? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She signed her name on the marriage certificate with trembling fingers, knowing she was trading her freedom for her family's survival. But she had no idea the groom, standing beside her, was about to become her greatest tormentor and her unexpected salvation. The Four Seasons Ballroom in downtown Atlanta sparkled like a diamond cage. Crystal chandeliers threw rainbow fragments across marble floors while 300 guests whispered behind champagne flutes. White roses climbed every column, their sweet scent mixing with expensive perfume and the bitter taste of obligation. Amara Johnson stood at the altar in a dress that cost more than her mother's diner made in 6 months. The silk felt foreign against her skin, like wearing someone else's life. 22 years old, and she'd never even been kissed. Yet here she was about to marry a man who looked at her like she was his enemy. Lucas Whitford stood 6 feet 2 inches of cold precision in his tailored tuxedo. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass, and those piercing blue eyes held nothing but contempt as he watched her approach. Wall Street's most ruthless real estate tycoon wasn't here for love. He was here for business. Have you ever felt trapped by family obligations? When duty conflicts with what your heart wants? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next will show you just how far desperation can push someone. The problem was simple. Amara's late father had left debts that could destroy 3 families. The solution was impossible. Marry this stranger to save everyone she loved. But what she didn't know was that Lucas believed she was part of an elaborate trap to steal his fortune. Do you take this man? The officiant's words felt like a death sentence. Her mother sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, clutching a handkerchief like a lifeline. Those tears weren't joy, they were guilt. Lucas's hand gripped hers during the ring exchange, his fingers strong and warm, but completely unforgiving. When he slipped the platinum band on her finger, his touch burned like a brand marking his property. She looked up into his face, searching for any hint of kindness, but found only ice. The guests applauded when they were pronounced husband and wife, but the sound felt hollow. Lucas leaned down to kiss her, their first kiss, and it was nothing more than a brief, cold press of lips that tasted like duty and resentment. Smile, he whispered against her ear, his breath hot on her neck despite the chill in his voice. You're getting what you wanted, but Amara hadn't wanted any of this. She wanted to finish college, maybe open a bookstore, find someone who would love her for who she was instead of what she could provide. Instead, she was now Mrs. Lucas Whitford, wife to a man who thought she was a gold digger. The reception dragged on for hours. Lucas played the perfect groom for the cameras, his hand possessive on her waist during their first dance, but she could feel the tension in his muscles, the way he held himself like he was touching something distasteful. Business associates congratulated them with knowing smiles and comments about mergers and beneficial arrangements. Nobody mentioned love. Nobody asked if she was happy. This wasn't that kind of wedding. As midnight approached and guests began to leave, Lucas's mask finally slipped. He leaned close again, but this time his words made her blood run cold. What would you do if your family's survival depended on marrying a stranger? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this bride was about to discover her new husband had plans for their wedding night that would change everything. As the reception ended and guests departed, Lucas leaned close to her ear, his breath hot against her neck. Don't think this changes anything between us. Tonight, you'll learn exactly what kind of man you've been sold to. The penthouse suite should have been romantic. Silk sheets, champagne, city lights. But it became a battlefield the moment he locked the door and turned to face his terrified bride. The elevator ride to the top floor of the Ritz-Carlton felt like ascending to her execution. Lucas stood on the opposite side, checking his phone with the casual indifference of a man heading to just another business meeting. But Amara could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched every few floors. The Manhattan skyline glittered beyond floor-to-ceiling windows when they entered the suite, millions of lights witnessing a marriage that was supposed to be about power and money, but was becoming something far more dangerous: truth. He poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey and downed it in one swallow. Then he turned to face her, and a look in his eyes made her step backward until her spine hit the window. So, his voice was deadly quiet. "How long have you been planning this?" "Planning what?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Don't play innocent with me." He moved closer, trapping her against the glass. The tears, the reluctant bride act, the whole "I never wanted this" performance. Very convincing. Heat flooded her cheeks. "It wasn't a performance. I didn't want this marriage any more than you did." "Right." His laugh was bitter. "You just happened to be the perfect victim. Young, beautiful, never been touched." His eyes raked over her face. "How much did they pay you to stay pure until you could trap a rich husband?" Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You think I wanted this? You think I dreamed of marrying a man who looks at me like I'm poison? I think you're a very good actress who saw an opportunity and took it." The accusation hit like a slap. Her chest tightened with rage and hurt and something else. Disappointment that this man, who looked like he could be kind if he wanted to, had already decided she was worthless. "My mother gave me something to give you," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Maybe it will help you understand." She walked to her small overnight bag, the only thing she'd been allowed to pack for her new life, and pulled out a sealed envelope. Her hand shook as she held it out to him. She said to give this to you if you ever doubted why I agreed to this marriage. Lucas stared at the envelope like it might explode, and he snatched it from her hands and tore it open. As he read, his face went completely white. The documents fluttered to the floor as his hands went slack. Bank statements, medical bills, loan shark threats, and, at the bottom, a letter in her father's handwriting, dated the day before he died. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do?" When the truth finally came out, how did it change everything? Because what Lucas was reading was about to destroy everything he thought he knew. The letter revealed that her father had discovered embezzlement in Lucas's company, money stolen by someone Lucas trusted completely. Her father had died before he could expose the theft, but he'd left evidence that could send the real criminal to prison. "Your uncle," Amara said quietly, watching understanding dawn in his eyes. "Richard Whitford. He's been stealing from you for years. My father found out and threatened to expose him unless he returned the money." Lucas sank into a chair, the fight going out of him like air from a punctured tire. "Richard arranged this marriage? He told my mother that marrying you was the only way to pay my father's debts and keep our family safe. But really, he was making sure the one person who could expose him became part of your family, someone you'd never believe." The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of manipulation and betrayal. When Lucas looked up at her again, his eyes held something she hadn't seen before: recognition. When the truth finally surfaces, does it set you free or destroy everything you thought you knew? Tell me in the comments what you would do if you discovered you'd been manipulated by someone you trusted. The envelope contained documents proving his own uncle had arranged their marriage to cover up embezzlement from Lucas's company. As the truth sank in, Lucas looked at his bride, really looked at her for the first time, and what he saw there made his chest tight with an emotion he didn't recognize. Apologies are harder when you've already broken something precious, and Lucas was about to discover that his new wife's forgiveness wouldn't come cheap. Dawn broke over Manhattan like a reluctant witness to their first morning as husband and wife. Amara had spent the night curled in a chair by the window, still wearing her wedding dress, while Lucas paced the suite until exhaustion finally claimed him on the couch. She woke to find him sitting at the small dining table, showered and dressed in jeans and a white button-down that made his eyes look less ice-cold in the morning light. 2 cups of coffee sat steaming beside a room service breakfast neither of them would touch. "We need to talk," he said without looking up from the documents scattered across the table. She smoothed her wrinkled silk skirt and joined him, accepting the coffee gratefully. The first sip burned her tongue, but the pain felt good, something real to focus on. "I owe you an apology." The words seemed to cost him. "I was wrong about you, about this whole situation. Wrong doesn't cover what you said to me last night." He flinched but didn't argue. "You're right. I was cruel, I thought." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "It doesn't matter what I thought. I was wrong." Amara studied his face, looking for the mask he'd worn at their wedding, but found only exhaustion and something that might have been regret. "Why did you believe I was trying to trap you?" "Because it happened before." His voice went flat. 5 years ago, a woman named Victoria convinced me she loved me, got engaged to me, then disappeared with $2 million and a list of my business contacts. Understanding hit her like a wave. "So, when Uncle Richard told you about a young woman from a poor family who needed to marry you for money, I assumed history was repeating itself." He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw something shift in his expression. "I should have seen that you were as trapped as I was." The penthouse felt different in daylight, less like a prison, more like a possibility. But Amara had learned not to trust possibilities. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we figure out how to make this work." He leaned back in his chair. "We're legally married. My uncle thinks he's one. And you," he paused, "you deserve better than what I gave you last night. When someone hurts you, but then shows genuine regret, how do you decide whether to give them a second chance? Tell me in the comments, because Amara was about to set conditions that would surprise them both. "If we're going to do this," she said, meeting his eyes steadily, "then we do it on equal terms. I'm not your property, and I'm not your burden. I won't be treated like either." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the first real expression she'd seen from him. "What are you proposing?" "Separate bedrooms. Separate lives. We play the happy couple in public until we can figure out how to deal with your uncle and get out of this mess. But in private, we're just two people trying to survive a situation neither of us wanted." He nodded slowly. "That's fair. More than fair, considering." They spent the morning making practical arrangements. He would move some of her things into the guest bedroom of his penthouse. She would learn about his business so she could play her part convincingly. They would attend social functions together, but maintain boundaries in private. It should have felt like a business arrangement, cold and impersonal. Instead, as they talked about schedules and expectations, Amara found herself studying the way his eyes crinkled when he almost smiled, the way his voice warmed when he wasn't trying to be intimidating. By afternoon, she was standing in the guest bedroom that would be hers, looking out at a view of Central Park that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. Her few belongings looked lost in the spacious room. A soft knock made her turn. Lucas stood in the doorway, holding a small wrapped box. "I forgot to give you this yesterday." He handed her the box, careful not to let their fingers touch. "It was my grandmother's." Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small diamond pendant. Simple, elegant, nothing like the flashy jewelry she'd expected. "It's beautiful," she said, and meant it. She was the only person in my family who ever loved someone for who they were instead of what they could provide. His voice went soft. "I thought maybe you'd understand what it meant." Their eyes met across the small space, and for a moment, the careful distance they'd established felt fragile. Then he stepped back, breaking the spell. "Dinner's at 7 if you want to join me." No pressure. After he left, Amara held the necklace up to the window, watching light dance through the diamond. Maybe this marriage could become something neither of them expected. Maybe they could find a way to be friends, at least. She had no idea how dangerous that hope would prove to be. When she emerged from the shower in nothing but a towel, finding him standing in the hallway, the air between them shifted. "I didn't know you were," he started, but his voice died as water droplets traced paths down her neck. And for the first time since their wedding, she didn't look away. Living with a woman you're not allowed to touch is torture, but wanting a woman who's learning not to fear you is something else entirely. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Lucas discovered that sharing space with Amara was like living with a constant low-grade fever. She was everywhere and nowhere, present but untouchable, friendly but distant. She'd taken over his home office in the mornings, spreading business documents across his mahogany desk while she learned about real estate development and corporate finance. Her questions were sharp, her insights surprising, and watching her mind work was becoming his favorite form of self-torture. "This deal with the Patterson Group," she said, tapping her pen against her lips, "the numbers don't add up. They're offering 20% over market value for land that's been contaminated. Why would they do that?" Lucas paused in reviewing contracts, distracted by the way afternoon sunlight caught the gold highlights in her brown hair. "What do you think?" "I think they know something you don't. Or they're planning something that makes the contamination irrelevant." She was right, of course. The Patterson Group had inside information about a city planning change that would make the land valuable regardless of environmental issues. Information they shouldn't have had. "You're going to be trouble for my competitors," he said, and was rewarded with one of her rare smiles. "Good. I like being trouble." The comment hung between them, loaded with implications neither would acknowledge. This was the danger zone they'd been skirting for weeks. Moments when their careful friendship threatened to become something else. His home office became their neutral ground. Mahogany desk between them like a negotiating table, but the tension in the air made every business discussion feel like foreplay. The worst part was how naturally she fit into his space. She'd rearranged his bookshelves, adding novels between his business texts. She kept fresh flowers on the side table. She made coffee that was actually drinkable and left it for him each morning with a brief note about her schedule. He was getting used to her presence in ways that should have worried him more than they did. "I have a charity gala tomorrow night," he said during one of their evening dinners. They'd fallen into the habit of eating together, maintaining the pretense that they were building a real partnership. "Do you need me to come with you?" She speared a piece of asparagus, not looking at him. "It would look strange if you didn't. But if you're not comfortable, I'll come." She met his eyes across the table. "What kind of charity?" "Literacy Foundation. Inner city schools." He paused. "I thought you might actually enjoy it, unlike most of the corporate functions." Her smile was genuine this time, transforming her whole face. "I would like that. Thank you for thinking of me." The gratitude in her voice did something complicated to his chest. When was the last time someone had thanked him for such a small consideration? Have you ever found yourself attracted to someone you were supposed to keep at arm's length? What changed your mind about them? Because Lucas was about to discover that protecting Amara would awaken instincts he didn't know he had. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Temple of Dinder providing a dramatic backdrop for Manhattan's elite. Amara wore a midnight blue dress that skimmed her curves without being obvious about it. Her hair swept up to reveal the graceful line of her neck. Lucas had to force himself to look away when she walked out of her bedroom. The transformation from the frightened girl at their wedding to this confident woman took his breath away. "You look beautiful," he said, offering his arm. "Thank you." A blush colored her cheeks. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The evening started perfectly. Amara charmed everyone she met, asking thoughtful questions about the foundation's work and sharing stories about growing up in Savannah that made hardened business leaders actually care about literacy rates. Lucas found himself watching her more than he should, noticing how she listened with her whole attention, how she made people feel heard and valued. She wasn't networking, she was connecting, and the difference was magnetic. Everything changed when Marcus Peterson cornered her by the bar. "So you're Whitford's little wife," Peterson said, his voice carrying the particular blend of condescension and interest that made Lucas's jaw clench from across the room. "How did a girl from," he looked her up and down, "wherever you're from, manage to land Manhattan's most eligible bachelor?" Lucas started moving toward them, but Amara's voice stopped him. "Same way trash like you keeps getting invited to events like this, I imagine. Luck and low standards." Peterson's face flushed red. "Listen, sweetheart. The lady asked you to leave her alone." Lucas appeared beside them, his voice deadly quiet. "We were just talking," Peterson said, but he stepped back from the ice in Lucas's eyes. "No, you were being disrespectful to my wife. There's a difference." After Peterson slithered away, Lucas turned to Amara. She was gripping her champagne flute so tightly her knuckles were white, but her chin was lifted defiantly. "You didn't need to do that," she said. "I can handle men like him." "I know you can, but you shouldn't have to." Something shifted in her expression as she looked up at him. "Thank you." The ride home was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence than they'd shared before. Lucas kept glancing at her profile, thinking about the way she'd stood up to Peterson, the way she'd fit so naturally into his world while never compromising who she was. When his business rival cornered her at the charity gala, making crude comments about Lucas's little wife, the protective fury in Lucas's eyes as he appeared beside her made her realize something had shifted. He wasn't just defending his reputation, he was defending her. She'd never been kissed, never been wanted, until the night her husband's control finally cracked and she discovered what it felt like to be desired by a man who was trying desperately not to want her. The confrontation with Peterson left something electric in the air between them during the car ride home. Amara sat pressed against the passenger door, hyper-aware of Lucas's presence beside her, the way his hands gripped the steering wheel, the tension radiating from his body. "Are you all right?" he asked as they waited at a red light. "I'm Fina." But she wasn't. Her heart was racing, and not just from the confrontation. Something about the way Lucas had stepped in, the protective fury in his voice, had awakened feelings she'd been trying to ignore for weeks. Men like Peterson. "I said I'm fine, Lucas." He glanced at her, and she saw something flash in his eyes. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Shut me out." "Not after tonight." The light turned green, but neither of them moved. Cars honked behind them, but Lucas was looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered. "What changed tonight?" she asked softly. "Everything." The city lights blurred past the car windows as they drove home in loaded silence, the air thick with everything they weren't saying, everything they were trying not to feel. Back at the penthouse, Amara headed straight for her room, but Lucas caught her wrist as she passed the living room. "Wait." The touch sent electricity up her arm. She turned to face him, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "I need to say something." "Lucas, when I saw him talking to you like that, touching you," his voice went rough. "I wanted to break his hands. He was just being a jerk. It happens. It shouldn't happen to you. Not ever." He stepped closer, still holding her wrist. "You deserve better than men like him. Better than this situation. Better than me." "Don't say that. It's true. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone else." The words slipped out before she could stop them. They hung in the space between them, honest and raw and dangerous. Lucas's eyes darkened. "Amara, I know we agreed to keep things separate. I know this is just an arrangement. But tonight, when you defended me," she took a shaky breath. "No one's ever done that for me before. You don't understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly." She stepped closer until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I understand that I've never wanted anyone the way I want you. I understand that every night I lie in bed thinking about what would happen if you knocked on my door. I understand that I'm probably making a mistake, but I don't care anymore." His control snapped like a rubber band pulled too tight. His free hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "You've never been with anyone," he said, voice hoarse. "No, but I want to be with you. What's more terrifying? Wanting someone you can't have, or discovering they want you back just as much? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next would change everything between them." He kissed her then, finally, and it was nothing like the cold press of lips at their wedding. This kiss was fire and hunger and weeks of suppressed desire. His mouth moved against hers with desperate need, as if he'd been dying of thirst and she was water. She kissed him back with all the inexperience and enthusiasm of someone tasting desire for the first time. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he groaned against her mouth. "Are you sure?" he whispered, pulling back just enough to meet her eyes. "Yes, I've never been more sure of anything." He lifted her easily, carrying her toward his bedroom. Not the guest room where she'd been sleeping, but his room, his bed, his space. Setting her down beside the massive king-size bed, he reached for the zipper of her dress. "Tell me if you want to stop," he said, pressing kisses along her neck as the midnight blue fabric pooled at her feet. "Tell me if I'm going too fast." But she didn't want him to stop. She wanted more. More of his hands on her skin, more of the way he looked at her like she was precious, more of the feelings building inside her like a storm. His thumb traced her bottom lip as she looked up at him with wide eyes. "You've never," he whispered. "Never," she confirmed, and the word hung between them like a promise and a warning. He undressed her slowly, reverently, as if unwrapping something sacred. Every touch asked permission. Every kiss was a question she answered with sighs. When he finally joined with her, moving with patient care despite his own need, she understood for the first time what it meant to feel complete. "I need you to know," he said afterward, as they lay tangled together in the moonlight. "This isn't just physical for me. It hasn't been for weeks." She traced patterns on his chest with her fingertip. "What is it then?" "I think I'm falling in love with you." The confession should have scared her. Instead, it felt like coming home. As she drifted to sleep in his arms, heart full and body satisfied, she had no idea that Uncle Richard was already planning their destruction. By morning, she would face a choice between protecting Lucas and protecting herself, and the wrong decision could destroy them both. As she drifted to sleep in his arms, 3 words formed in her mind that terrified her more than anything she'd ever faced. By morning, she was gone, leaving nothing but the indent of her head on his pillow. Just when they were learning to trust each other, the man who'd arranged their marriage delivered an ultimatum that threatened to destroy everything they were building. Lucas woke to empty sheets and the sound of Amara's phone buzzing on the nightstand. She stood by the window in his shirt, reading a text message that made her face go pale. "What is it?" he asked, sitting up. "My mother. She's in the hospital." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "Heart attack." He was out of bed and reaching for his clothes before she finished speaking. "We'll take my jet. We can be in Savannah in 2 hours." She turned to stare at him. You think I'm letting you handle this alone?" Something cracked in her carefully controlled expression. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." He pulled on his jeans, not caring that she was watching. "We're married, remember? Your family is my family now." The flight to Savannah was quiet tension. Amara stared out the window while Lucas made calls, arranging for the best cardiac specialist to be flown in, clearing his schedule for the week. She didn't ask him to do any of it. She just watched with growing amazement as this man, who'd been a stranger 6 weeks ago, moved mountains for her mother's health. Memorial Health University Medical Center smelled like disinfectant and fear. Amara's mother lay connected to machines that beeped and hummed, her face gray against white pillows. "Baby," her mother whispered when she saw Amara. "I'm so sorry. About everything. Don't talk. Just rest. I need to tell you something about the marriage." "Later, Mama. When you're stronger." Lucas stood back, giving them privacy, but Amara could feel his presence like an anchor in the storm. When visiting hours ended, he insisted on getting a hotel room. 2 beds he specified to the desk clerk, but his consideration still made her chest warm. That night, as they sat on their separate beds reviewing the doctor's reports, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Mrs. Whitford." The voice was smooth, familiar. "This is Uncle Richard." Lucas went rigid when he heard the name. "I'm calling because I understand your mother is ill. Such a shame. Hospital bills can be overwhelming. What do you want?" Her voice was steady, but her hand shook. "A conversation. With you. Alone. Tomorrow at 3, Forsyth Park. Come alone, or your mother's treatment becomes complicated." The line went dead. Amara stared at the phone, her face white. "What did he say?" Lucas demanded. "When people try to use your loved ones against you, or do you respond? Do you give in to protect them, or do you fight back?" Because Amara was about to face an impossible choice. She told him about the call, watching his expression darken with every word. "You're not going," he said flatly. "I have to. If he can hurt my mother." "He can't. I won't let him." "How can you stop him?" "He has connections, money. So do I. More than he does." Lucas moved to sit on the edge of her bed. "Trust me, please." But the next morning, while Lucas was on a conference call with lawyers, Amara slipped out of the hotel. Some fights you have to face alone, even when it breaks your heart to leave behind the person who wants to protect you. Forsyth Park stretched green and peaceful under the Georgia sun, Spanish moss drifting like ghosts from ancient oak trees. Uncle Richard sat on a bench feeding pigeons, looking like any harmless older man enjoying retirement. "Amara, you came. What do you want?" Straight to business. I like that. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I want you to convince my nephew to divorce you. Quietly. No scandal, no messy legal battles. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll destroy him. His company, his reputation, everything he's built. Richard stood, brushing crumbs from his hands. You see, I have evidence of some very questionable business practices. Practices that could land him in federal prison. You're lying. Am I? Lucas has been cutting corners, bribing officials, hiding environmental reports. Of course, I helped him do it, but I was very careful to keep records that show him as the mastermind and me as the reluctant participant. The world tilted. You set him up. I protected myself, and now I'm giving you a chance to protect him. Walk away, and I bury the evidence. Stay married, and I bury your husband. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Where are you? We need to talk. Richard noticed her reading the message. He's probably figured out you're here by now. Brilliant man, my nephew. Too bad he trusts the wrong people. If you think I'll abandon him, I think you'll do what's best for everyone. You have 24 hours to decide. As he walked away, Amara sank onto the bench, Uncle Richard's ultimatum echoing in her head. Choose Lucas's freedom or choose their marriage. Save the man she loved by breaking both their hearts. She was already at the airport, boarding pass in hand, when her phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. If you leave now, you'll never know what I chose. The departure gate was calling her flight, but her feet wouldn't move. He had 30 seconds to choose between saving his empire or saving his marriage, and what he chose shocked everyone, including himself. The airport terminal buzzed with travelers and announcements, but all Amara could hear was her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Lucas's text burned on her phone screen. If you leave now, you'll never know what I chose. Her boarding pass crumpled in her sweating palm. Gate 7 was calling final boarding for the flight to New York, but her feet felt welded to the floor. Then she saw him. Lucas ran through the terminal like a man possessed, his usually perfect hair messy, his white shirt wrinkled from his desperate rush. When his eyes found hers across the crowded space, relief and determination crashed together on his face. Don't, he said when he reached her, breathing hard. Don't get on that plane. Your uncle will destroy you if I stay. Let him try. Lucas, you don't understand. I understand everything. He pulled out his phone, showing her a recording app. I recorded our entire conversation this morning. Every thread, every admission of fraud, every detail of his plan. Her mouth fell open. You followed me. I protected you. There's a difference. His hands found her shoulders, steadying her. Richard made one mistake. He confessed to crimes I never committed. Turns out, when you record someone admitting to framing you, it becomes evidence. The boarding announcement called again. Last call for a flight. He said he had evidence against you. Forged documents. Fake emails. None of it real, but it would have taken months to prove in court. Lucas's grip tightened, but now we have him confessing to creating false evidence. Game over. So why did you come here? Why not just let me leave? His eyes went soft. Because losing my company is nothing compared to losing you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Lucas, I love you. He said it simply, like stating a fact. I know it's complicated. I know this started as an arrangement, but I love you. And if you get on that plane, I'll never forgive myself for not fighting harder to keep you. Around them, people rushed to catch flights and find gates, but they stood in their own bubble of truth and possibility. Your uncle is about to be arrested. FBI agents are searching his office right now. Lucas smiled, and for the first time since she'd known him, it reached his eyes. Funny thing about recording confessions, law enforcement tend to take them seriously. When was the last time someone chose you over everything else they valued? When someone proved that you were worth fighting for? Because Amara was about to make a choice that would define the rest of their lives. She dropped her boarding pass and kissed him instead. The kiss was desperate, grateful, full of all the fear and relief and love they'd been holding back. Passengers stared as they held each other in the middle of the busy terminal, but neither cared about anything except the solid reality of being together. I love you too, she whispered against his lips. I was so scared I'd lose you. Never. Not as long as I have breath in my body. They made out like teenagers in the airport, hands tangling in hair, hearts beating fast with the thrill of survival and the promise of forever. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we go home. We deal with the fallout from Richard arrest. We build a real marriage." His thumb traced her bottom lip. "And tonight, I make love to my wife properly." The flight back to New York felt like flying toward their real life instead of running from it. Lucas held her hand the entire time, occasionally lifting it to his lips, pressing soft kisses to her knuckles. "Are you nervous?" he asked as they descended toward the city. "About your uncle going to prison?" "No, about us. About making this real." She considered the question seriously. "A little, but good nervous. Like standing at the edge of something beautiful and deciding to jump." "I'll catch you," he promised. "I know." The apartment felt different when they walked through the door together. Not like a shared space they were both trying to navigate, but like home. Their home. Lucas poured wine while Amara changed out of her travel clothes, and when she emerged in a simple sundress that showed off her legs, his eyes heated in a way that made her stomach flutter. "To new beginnings," he said, handing her a glass. "To choosing each other." They drank, eyes locked, the tension between them shifting from uncertain to inevitable. When he set down his glass and moved toward her, she didn't step back. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, voice low and rough with want. She answered by reaching for the buttons of his shirt. He took her hand as they ran for cover, raindrops painting her lashes, and she realized with startling clarity that she was already falling. The only question was whether she would let herself hit the ground or trust him to catch her. Their first time wasn't just about physical intimacy. It was about two broken souls learning that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most unexpected places. The bedroom felt sacred in the soft lamplight as Lucas led her inside, his fingers intertwined with hers. No rushing, no desperation now, just the quiet certainty of two people who'd chosen each other freely. "We have all the time in the world," he said, turning to face her beside the bed. "No one's chasing us anymore." She looked up at him, this man who'd gone from stranger to enemy, to protector to lover in just 6 weeks. "I can't believe this is real." "Believe it." He cupped her face in his hands. "You're my wife. Not because our families arranged it, not because of debts or obligations. Because I choose you, and you choose me." He kissed her slowly this time, savoring instead of consuming. His hands moved to her shoulders, sliding the straps of her sundress down with patient care. "Tell me what you want," he whispered against her neck. "I want to feel beautiful. I want to feel wanted." Her voice was soft but steady. "I want to feel like I belong here. With you. You do belong here. You belong with me." The dress fell away, and she didn't feel exposed or vulnerable. She felt cherished. His eyes moved over her body with reverence, not possession. "You're perfect," he breathed. "I'm not. You are to me." When he laid her back against the silk sheets, she felt like a queen instead of a burden. His mouth followed paths his hands had mapped, kissing and tasting until she was writhing beneath him, making sounds she'd never made before. "Please," she whispered, though she wasn't sure what she was asking for. "Please what?" His voice was strained with control. "Please love me. All of me." What does it mean when someone sees your inexperience as a gift instead of a problem? When they treat your trust like something precious? Tell me in the comments about a time someone made you feel truly valuable. He joined with her slowly, carefully, watching her face for any sign of discomfort. When she gasped and arched beneath him, it wasn't from pain but from the overwhelming rightness of it all. "Okay," he asked, voice tight with restraint. "More than okay. Perfect." They moved together like they'd been made for this, for each other. Every touch was a conversation, every kiss a promise. When she called his name at the peak of pleasure, he followed her over the edge, and they collapsed together, hearts racing, souls connected. Afterward, she traced lazy patterns on his chest while he played with her hair. "I need to tell you something," she said. His hand stilled. "What?" "While I was packing to leave today, I realized something. I wasn't running because I was scared of your uncle. She lifted her head to meet his eyes. I was running because I was scared of how much I love you. And now I'm more scared of living without you than I am of loving you completely. He rolled her beneath him, kissing her deeply. Good, because I plan to love you so thoroughly you'll never want to run again. They made love again, slower this time, learning each other's bodies and responses. She discovered she liked the way he groaned when she kissed his neck. He learned that touching her just right could make her forget her own name. I love you, she said as Dawn P. They had no idea that Uncle Richard's arrest was just the beginning. The real battle for their happiness was about to start, and this time, the enemy would come from inside their own hearts. Morning brought room service and lazy kisses and the feeling that they could conquer anything together. But when Lucas's phone rang at 9, business reality crashed back into their perfect bubble. The board called an emergency meeting, he said after hanging up. Richard's arrest is causing panic. Stock prices are dropping. What does that mean for us? It means I have to choose between spending today with my wife or saving my company. He kissed her forehead, and for the first time in my life, the choice is easy. Go, she said, surprising him. Save your company. I'll be here when you get back. Are you sure? I'm sure. We're a team now. Remember? Your success is our success. As the door closed behind him, doubt whispered, when worlds collide, something always breaks. She just didn't know yet which one of them would shatter first. Love makes you strong, but it also gives your enemies the perfect target. And Uncle Richard knew exactly where to aim. The New York Post headline screamed from every newsstand. Real estate king's shotgun wedding too small-town girl. Below it, a photo of Amara from their wedding day, looking young and scared beside Lucas's stern profile. Amara stared at the newspaper in the lobby of Lucas's building, her stomach dropping to her feet. The article was worse than the headline, full of speculation about her mysterious background and convenient timing of their marriage. Mrs. Whitford, the doorman's voice was gentle. Are you all right? She forced a smile. Fine, just surprised. But she wasn't fine. The article made her sound like a gold digger who'd trapped Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. It mentioned her mother's diner, their financial struggles, even had quotes from unnamed sources about questionable family connections. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Don't read the papers. Coming home now. Too late. She'd already read every poisonous word. When he walked into the penthouse 20 minutes later, she was sitting on the couch with a newspaper spread across the coffee table. This is what they think of me, she said without looking up. This is what they'll always think. I don't care what they think. Well, I do. She finally met his eyes. These are your friends, your business partners. How long before you start wondering if they're right? His face went dark. Never. Easy to say now. Look at me. He knelt beside the couch, taking her hands in his. I know who you are. You're the woman who takes care of everyone else first. You're the woman who learned my business in 3 weeks because you wanted to help. You're the woman who makes me coffee every morning even though you don't have to. Lucas, you're the woman I love, and anyone who has a problem with that can go to hell. His fierce loyalty should have made her feel better, but the doubt had already taken root. What if this hurts your business? What if? Then we'll build something new, together. The intercom buzzed, interrupting them. Mr. Whitford, there are reporters in the lobby asking for comments. Lucas's jaw tightened. Tell them no comment. And increase security. But the damage was spreading. Over the next 3 days, more articles appeared. Photos of Amara's mother's small diner with captions about humble beginnings. Speculation about prenups and family debts. Anonymous quotes from family friends painting her as a schemer. When the world is against your relationship, how do you stay strong together? What keeps love alive under attack? Because Amara was about to discover that sometimes the cruelest wounds come from the people closest to you. The worst part was watching Lucas's business associates pull away. Invitations stopped coming. Phone calls went unreturned. The whispers followed them everywhere. Maybe we should consider a separation, she said one evening after a particularly brutal day of stares and whispers at a business lunch. Just until this dies down. No. His response was immediate and final. We don't run from bullies. That night, He held her closer than usual, his hands moving over her body with desperate reverence, as if he could protect her from the world's judgment through sheer physical connection. "They can say whatever they want about us," he whispered against her skin as they moved together in the darkness. "But this is real. What we have is real." She believed him when he touched her like that, when his body worshipped hers with patient intensity. In his arms, the outside world faded away, leaving only truth and pleasure and love. But morning always came, bringing fresh headlines and new attacks. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Elena Martinez, Lucas's former assistant who'd quit 6 months earlier, called with information that changed everything. "I know who's been talking to the press," she said, "and you're not going to like it." The name she gave made Amara's world shift on its axis. Not Uncle Richard, not a business rival, someone much closer to home. The final headline made her blood run cold. "Secret recording reveals real reason for Whitford marriage." She knew that voice on the audio clip, and it wasn't her uncle-in-law. Someone else had been pulling the strings all along. Sometimes the person you trust most is the one holding the knife. Amara was about to discover that betrayal wears the most familiar faces. The audio clip played on repeat in her mind as they drove toward Savannah. Her own mother's voice, recorded weeks before the wedding, discussing payment schedules and keeping the girl in line until the marriage was secure. "Turn it off," Lucas said gently, but Amara couldn't stop listening to the evidence of her mother's betrayal. "She sold me," Amara whispered, "not just for the debts. She got paid extra to make sure I went through with it. We don't know the full story yet, don't we?" She turned to stare at him. $22,000, Lucas. That's what I was worth to her. $20,000 to hand over her daughter to a stranger. The small diner in Savannah looked exactly the same. Checkered floors, vinyl booths, the smell of coffee and broken dreams. But everything had changed when she walked through those doors knowing the truth. Her mother sat in the back booth, the same one where she'd told Amara about the marriage 6 weeks ago. But now the older woman looked smaller, grayer, like guilt had aged her years and weeks. "I wonder when you'd come," her mother said softly. "Did you?" Amara slid into the opposite seat while Lucas stood guard by the door. "Or were you hoping I'd never find out?" "Baby, you have to understand." "I understand perfectly. You sold me." The words came out calm, controlled. "You sold your own daughter to cover gambling debts and make a profit." Her mother's tears fell like rain on the cracked Formica table. "I was protecting our family." "No, you were protecting yourself. The loan sharks were going to kill me." Richard offered a solution that kept everyone safe. "Everyone except me." Amara leaned forward. "Did you ever ask what I wanted? Did you care that I was terrified? That I cried every night for 2 weeks before the wedding? I thought he'd be good to you eventually. Rich men, they come around." "Stop." Lucas's voice cut through the diner like a blade. "Just stop lying to her." He moved to stand behind Amara's chair, his hands protective on her shoulders. "We know about the gambling debts. We know about the 20,000. We know you've been feeding information to the press." Her mother's face crumpled. "They said they'd pay my medical bills if I gave them stories about you too. I needed the money for my heart medication." "You had other choices," Amara said quietly. "You could have asked me for help. You could have been honest. And watch you throw your life away taking care of me. Let you work 3 jobs to keep me alive." Her mother shook her head. "This way, you got a good husband and financial security. This way, you got paid twice for the same lie." The truth hung between them like smoke from a fire that had burned everything clean. Amara felt empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out her insides and left only echoes. Have you ever discovered someone you love had been lying to you your whole life? How do you rebuild trust after that kind of betrayal? Because what Amara did next would surprise everyone, including herself. She stood up slowly, Lucas's hands falling away from her shoulders. "I forgive you," she said. Her mother looked up with hope blooming in her eyes. "But I don't trust you, and I won't let you hurt me again." Amara pulled out her checkbook, writing quickly. "This will cover your medical bills for the next year. After that, you're on your own." "Amara, please. I'm not your little girl anymore. I'm not anyone's victim. I'm Lucas's wife by choice now. And that means I get to choose who's part of our family." She tore out the check and placed it on the table. Good be, Mama. Walking out of that diner felt like shedding an old skin. Lucas took her hand as they reached the car, squeezing gently. How do you feel? He asked. Free. Sad, but free. She looked back at the diner one last time. She made her choices. Now I get to make mine. And what do you choose? You. Us. A future that we build together with people who actually love us. As they drove away, Amara's phone buzzed with a message that made her freeze. If you think your mother was the only one keeping secrets, think again. Ask your husband about Victoria's real reason for leaving him. Some patterns never change. Lucas noticed her face go pale. What is it? She showed him the message, watching his expression carefully. Who's Victoria, Lucas? And why is someone trying to use her against us? His silence was answer enough. Even after everything they'd been through, there were still secrets between them. The question was, would the truth set them free or destroy them all over again? When they pulled into their building's garage, another surprise waited. A woman with platinum blonde hair and designer clothes, leaning against a black Mercedes like she owned the world. Hello, Lucas, she said with a smile sharp as glass. Miss me? Just when she thought she knew all of Lucas's secrets, a stranger appeared with evidence that her husband wasn't the man she thought she'd married. Victoria Sterling looked like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Perfect blonde hair, designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's cars, and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. She also looked at Lucas like she still owned him. Victoria. Lucas's voice was carefully neutral, but Amara felt him tense beside her. What are you doing here? Congratulating you on your marriage, of course. Victoria's green eyes slid to Amara with obvious assessment. So this is the famous child bride everyone's talking about. Heat flooded Amara's cheeks. Excuse me. Oh, did I touch a nerve? Sorry. Victoria's smile was all teeth. I just made you look so young. Fresh. Untouched. Victoria, Lucas warned. What? I'm being nice. Victoria pushed off from her car, moving closer. I actually came to do you both a favor. We don't need any favors from you, Amara said, finding her voice. Oh, sweetie, you really don't know, do you? Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Lucas didn't tell you about our history. Some of it, the important parts, like why I really left him. Victoria's eyes glittered with malice. Or the real reason he was so eager to marry you? Lucas stepped forward. That's enough. Is it? Because I think your little wife deserves to know what kind of man she's really married to. Amara's heart started pounding. What are you talking about? Victoria pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like text messages. Lucas and I stayed in touch after our breakup. He told me all about his arranged marriage plans. Want to know what he said about you? Don't, Lucas said, but his voice lacked conviction. He said, and I quote, she's perfect. Young enough to mold, innocent enough to trust me completely, and grateful enough never to leave. Victoria looked up with satisfaction. Sound romantic to you? The words hit Amara like physical blows. She looked at Lucas, searching his face for denial, but found only guilt. Tell me she's lying, Amara whispered. Lucas's silence said everything. Have you ever had the ground ripped out from under you by someone you trusted? When everything you believed about someone turns out to be a lie? Because Amara was about to learn that sometimes the truth is more complicated than it appears. I said those things, Lucas admitted quietly, but not for the reasons you think. Really? Then explain. Victoria crossed her arms. Explain how you researched her family for months before the marriage was even suggested. Explain how you knew about her mother's gambling debts before anyone told you. Explain how you had private investigators following her for weeks. Each revelation hit like a separate blow. Amara backed away from both of them, her breathing getting shallow. You investigated me? I investigate everyone I do business with. I'm not a business deal. The words exploded out of her. I'm your wife. You are now. But then I was just a mark to you. Someone to study and manipulate. Lucas reached for her, but she flinched away. Don't touch me. Amara, please. Let me explain. What's to explain? You researched me like a stock purchase. You knew exactly what to say, how to act, how to make me fall in love with you. That's not. Did you plan the whole thing? The uncle's betrayal, the evidence that saved us? Was that all part of your game too? No, I swear, none of that was planned. My uncle really did betray us both. Victoria watched their fight with obvious pleasure. Ask him about the prenup, honey. Ask him what happens to you if this marriage doesn't work out. What prenup? Amara's voice was deadly quiet. Lucas's face went white. There is no prenup. Yet Victoria smiled, but there was supposed to be. Lucas's lawyers drew one up that would have left you with nothing if you divorced him within 5 years. Want to guess who convinced him not to use it? Me, Lucas said desperately. I chose not to use it because I fell in love with you, or because you realized you didn't need legal protection when you had emotional manipulation. The room felt too small, the air too thin. Amara couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the pain of realizing her entire marriage might be built on lies. I need some air, she said, heading for the door. Amara, wait. Don't follow me, either of you. She made it to the roof garden before the tears came. Manhattan spread out below her like a glittering maze, but all she could see was her own stupidity. How could she have believed that a man like Lucas could actually love someone like her? Her phone buzzed with text after text from Lucas, but she didn't read them. Instead, she called the only person who might understand. Elena, it's Amara Whitford. I need to ask you something about my husband. If someone told you that the person you loved had been manipulating you from the beginning, would you believe them? If they had proof, would it matter that your heart said something different? Tell me in the comments what you would do. The conversation with Elena lasted an hour and changed everything Amara thought she knew about her marriage. By the time she hung up, the sun was setting, painting the sky deep orange and pink. Lucas found her there, sitting on the garden bench with her knees pulled up to her chest. Victoria's gone, he said, sitting carefully beside her but not touching. Good for her. Elena called me. She told me what you asked her. Amara finally looked at him. And I think it's time I told you the whole truth. All of it. Even the parts that make me look worse than Victoria already did. His confession would either destroy them completely or prove that love could survive even the ugliest truths. But first, he had to find the courage to risk everything on honesty. When she confronted Lucas with the evidence, his silence said everything. It's true, isn't it? She whispered. His confession would either destroy them or make them stronger than ever. Yes, but not for the reasons you think. Some truths are ugly, but they're also the foundation on which real love is built. And Lucas was about to lay bare every secret that had brought them together. The rooftop garden felt like a confessional as Lucas spread documents across the small table between them. Financial records, investigation reports, private emails, evidence of a man who'd fallen in love with someone he was supposed to be using. I did research you, he began, his voice steady but strained. For 6 months before we ever met. Amara said nothing, just watched him with eyes that gave away nothing. Uncle Richard came to me with a business proposal. Marry a young woman from a struggling family. Control her through financial dependence. Use her as a front for money laundering through small-town investments. And you agree? I agreed to look into it. I was angry about Victoria, about being betrayed. The idea of a marriage that was purely business seemed safe. Lucas pulled out a thick folder. These are the reports my investigators compiled about you and your family. She opened the folder with trembling hands. Photos of her walking to work, transcripts of conversations with co-workers, financial records of her mother's diner. Her entire life reduced to data points and surveillance. You watched me for months. I did, but something unexpected happened. He leaned forward, desperate for her to understand. The more I learned about you, the less I wanted to use you. What do you mean? I read about how you worked 3 jobs to pay for your mother's medications. How you gave up your college scholarship to keep the diner running after your father died. How you turned down dates because you were too busy taking care of everyone else. He pulled out more papers, handwritten notes in his own writing. These are my personal observations. Not for the investigators, just for me. His voice went soft. June 15th. She stayed late at the diner to help an elderly customer who couldn't afford her meal. Paid for it herself. July 2nd. Gave her lunch to a homeless man and worked through her break. July 20th. worked 16 hours straight when her mother had chest pains, wouldn't leave the hospital until she knew she was okay. Amara stared at the notes, seeing her own life through his eyes. "I fell in love with you before we ever met," he continued. "I fell in love with your kindness, your strength, your loyalty. By the time the marriage was arranged, I wasn't planning to use you. I was planning to protect you." "From what?" "From my uncle. From a situation your mother had created. For me." Rain started falling, light drops that caught the string lights hanging overhead. Neither of them moved to go inside. "The prenup Victoria mentioned?" "I refused to sign it. My lawyers thought I was insane, but I couldn't put legal barriers between us when I was hoping you might actually learn to care about me. And the night we met, your anger, fear." He laughed bitterly. "I was terrified you'd see through me, figure out that I'd been watching you, that I already knew everything about you while you knew nothing about me. Is love stronger when it grows from perfect circumstances or when it survives imperfect truths? When someone confesses to manipulation but proves they chose love instead? Because Amara's next decision would define their entire future." She closed the folder and looked at him. Really looked. The man sitting across from her wasn't the cold stranger from their wedding or the manipulative schemer Victoria had painted. He was someone who'd made mistakes, learned from them, and chosen love over control. "You should have told me. I know. I was afraid you'd leave. I might have. 2 months ago." She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "But not now. Not after everything we've been through." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I understand why you did it. I'm saying I forgive you for not being perfect." She smiled. It was like sunrise after the longest night. "And I'm saying I love you anyway. All of you. Even the parts that are messy and complicated." Relief crashed over his face like a wave. "Amara, but no more secrets. Ever. We tell each other everything from now on, even if it hurts. Deal?" He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. "I love you. More than I thought I could love anyone." "Show me," she whispered. They made love in his bedroom as rain drummed against the windows, washing away the last of their secrets. This time, when he touched her, she knew it came from complete honesty. When she gave herself to him, it was with full knowledge of who he really was. "I choose you," she breathed against his skin as they moved together. "I choose us with all the messy, complicated truth of it. Always," he promised, and she believed him. They had survived manipulation, betrayal, and the ugly truth about how they'd met. Now they could build something real on a foundation of honesty instead of lies. But as they lay together in the aftermath, neither noticed the figure watching from the building across the street or the camera capturing their most intimate moments through the rain-streaked windows. Uncle Richard's final revenge was just beginning. Privacy is a luxury, but dignity is a choice. And when their most intimate moments became public spectacle, Amara and Lucas discovered which battles are worth fighting together. The photos were everywhere by morning. Magazine covers, websites, social media, intimate pictures of them in their bedroom, stolen moments that should have been private now displayed for the world's judgment. Real estate tycoons' steamy marriage screamed from newspaper stands. Inside the bedroom of America's most controversial couple blazed across gossip sites. Amara sat on their bed, laptop open, scrolling through image after image of their most private moments. Her hands shook as she read the comments. Thousands of strangers discussing her body, her performance, her worthiness. "Close it," Lucas said, taking the laptop away. "Don't torture yourself. How did they get these pictures?" Her voice was small, broken. Telephoto lens from the building across the street. Professional equipment. His jaw was granite. This wasn't random paparazzi. Someone paid for this. Her phone rang, a number she recognized. Uncle Richard, calling from prison. "Mrs. Whitford, enjoying your 15 minutes of fame. You did this. I made arrangements before my unfortunate incarceration. Amazing what money can buy, even from behind bars." Lucas grabbed the phone. "Richard, Lucas, how does it feel to have your private life splashed across every screen in America? How does it feel to know millions of people have seen your wife naked?" The line went dead. Camera flashes exploded like lightning as they exited the courthouse later that day. Reporters shouting questions designed to wound, but they walked through the chaos hand in hand, unbreakable. Mrs. Whitford, how do you respond to claims you're just another gold digger? Mr. Whitford, do you regret marrying beneath your social class? Are the photos authentic? How do you feel about your private moments being exposed? Lucas's hand tightened on hers, but Amara surprised everyone by stopping on the courthouse steps. I have something to say. Lucas looked at her with concern, but she squeezed his hand reassuringly. She was done running from bullies. When people try to shame you for your story, how do you find the strength to own it proudly? What gives you courage when the whole world is watching? Because what Amara said next would silence her critics forever. Yes, I come from a poor family. Yes, I married a rich man. Yes, those photos are real, stolen from our private bedroom by criminals trying to hurt us. Her voice carried clearly over the crowd. But here's what you don't understand. I didn't marry Lucas for his money. I married him because he's the first person who ever saw my worth when I couldn't see it myself. The questions died as reporters listened. You want to shame me for being intimate with my husband? For loving him completely? For building a real marriage from an arranged one? She lifted her chin defiantly. Shame away, but you'll have to get through him first, and good luck with that. Lucas's eyes blazed with pride as she spoke. When she finished, he stepped forward. My wife is the strongest, most intelligent, most beautiful woman I've ever known. Anyone who has a problem with our marriage is welcome to take it up with me personally. The crowd actually applauded as they walked away. That night, they made love with desperate intensity, reclaiming their privacy and intimacy after having it violated so publicly. Every touch was defiant, every kiss a rejection of shame. I'm so proud of you, he whispered against her neck. The way you handled them today. I'll learn from the best, she replied, pulling him deeper in her arms. Their bodies moved together with fierce claiming, proving that what they'd built was stronger than anything designed to tear them apart. When she cried out his name at the peak of pleasure, it wasn't from pain, but from the overwhelming power of choosing love over fear. We survived it all, she breathed against his lips afterward. We did more than survive, he replied, rolling her beneath him for another round. We won, but their victory celebration was interrupted by a knock at the door. Hotel security with news that would change everything again. The unexpected support came from an impossible source. Lucas's ex-fiancée stepped forward with evidence that could destroy Uncle Richard forever. He did the same thing to me, she said, eyes blazing. It's time to end this. Victory tastes sweetest when you've earned it together, and justice feels most complete when it comes from the most unexpected allies. Victoria Sterling stood in their hotel suite at midnight, no longer the polished predator from that afternoon. Her perfect hair was messy, her makeup smudged, and her hands shook as she held out a tablet loaded with evidence. I lied earlier, she said without preamble, about the text messages, about Lucas planning to manipulate you. None of that was real. Amara sat up straighter on the couch. Then why? Because Richard paid me to break you up, just like he paid your mother to feed stories to the press. Victoria's voice cracked. I needed the money for legal fees. Richard destroyed my reputation after I left Lucas, made sure I couldn't get work anywhere. When he offered me a way to get revenge and financial security, you took it, Lucas finished, his voice surprisingly gentle. I took it, but watching you two today, seeing how you defended each other. Victoria wiped her eyes. I remembered what real love looks like, and I couldn't let Richard win again. The tablet contained recordings, financial records, communication logs. Everything needed to prove Uncle Richard had orchestrated a campaign of harassment from his prison cell. He's been paying people to follow you, photograph you, spread lies about you. The media coverage, the social media attacks, even some of the legal challenges to Lucas's business, all Richard's work. Lucas studied the evidence with growing amazement. This is enough to add decades to his sentence. It gets better. Victoria scrolled to another file. He's been embezzling from the prison commissary fund too. Apparently, crime is the only career he's good at. They spent the night preparing evidence packages for the FBI, the SEC, and the Manhattan District Attorney. By dawn, Uncle Richard's extended criminal enterprise was fully exposed. The courthouse steps became their stage 3 days later as the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts of fraud, embezzlement, harassment, and conspiracy. Uncle Richard's empire crumbled like a house of cards built on decades of lies and betrayal. "How does it feel to be vindicated?" a reporter asked as they left the courthouse. "It feels like justice," Amara replied. "But more than that, it feels like freedom. How do you celebrate when you've overcome something designed to destroy you? What does victory mean when you've earned it together?" Because Lucas and Amara were about to discover that the best revenge is living well. That night, they celebrated in the privacy of their rebuilt sanctuary. Lucas carried her over the threshold of their penthouse like a real bride this time, both of them laughing with relief and joy. "We did it," she said as he set her down. "We actually survived all of it. More than survived. We won." He kissed her deeply, pouring months of fear and relief into the connection. "We're free to love each other without looking over our shoulders." They made love like people who'd survived a war, grateful, passionate, claiming each other with the fierce tenderness of those who'd almost lost everything. Every touch was a celebration, every kiss a promise that nothing would separate them again. "I love you," she whispered as they moved together. "I love you so much it scares me. Don't be scared. Never be scared of this." His hands framed her face as he moved inside her. "This is the one thing in our lives that's completely real, completely ours." Afterward, they lay tangled together, planning their future with the freedom of people who'd earned the right to dream. "I want to renew our vows," Lucas said suddenly. "Why?" "Because our first wedding was about obligation and lies. I want one that's about choice and truth." She smiled, tracing patterns on his chest. "What kind of wedding?" "Small, real, just us and the people who actually love us." "That's a very short guest list." "Perfect. Less people to judge, more focus on what matters." Victoria had left one final gift, an apology letter and contact information for other women Uncle Richard had manipulated over the years. Together, Lucas and Amara planned to help them get justice too. "We should start a foundation," Amara suggested. "Help people who've been trapped in situations like ours." "I love that idea. What would we call it?" "The Choice Foundation." Because everyone deserves the right to choose their own life. As they fell asleep planning their real future, neither could imagine how perfect their new beginning would actually be. 6 months later, as they renewed their vows in a ceremony of their choosing, small, intimate, real, Amara had one more surprise that would complete their journey from arrangement to forever. A year ago, she'd been forced to marry a stranger. Today, she was choosing to spend forever with the man who'd become her heart, her home, and her greatest love story. The garden at the historic Savannah Mansion glowed with string lights and southern charm. Live oak trees draped in Spanish moss created a natural cathedral, while 50 guests, carefully chosen friends and family who'd supported them through everything, watched with genuine joy. Amara wore a simple ivory dress that she'd picked herself, her hair loose around her shoulders the way Lucas loved it. No designer gown forced on her by obligation. No tears of fear or sadness. Just pure happiness radiating from every inch of her body. Lucas stood at the altar in a charcoal gray suit, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked toward him. Not down an aisle of duty this time, but toward a future they'd chosen together. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we're gathered here to witness something special. Not a first marriage, but a first choice. Not an arrangement, but an affirmation." Elena Martinez stood as Amara's maid of honor, having become a close friend over the months. Even Victoria had sent flowers with a note. "Congratulations on finding the real thing." "Lucas," the minister continued, "do you take Amara to be your wife? Not because you have to, but because you choose to." "I choose her," Lucas said, voice strong and sure. "I choose her every day, in every way, forever." "And Amara, do you take Lucas to be your husband? Freely, willingly, with full knowledge of who he is?" I do. I choose him, with all his imperfections and all his love. They exchanged new rings, simple gold bands they'd picked together. And when the minister pronounced them husband and wife again, the kiss was everything their first one hadn't been. Tender, passionate, full of promise and joy. The reception was held in the mansion's ballroom, but this time the celebration was real. Laughter instead of whispers. Dancing instead of networking. Love instead of obligation. Speech, someone called during dinner. Lucas stood, pulling Amara up beside him. A year ago, I thought I was getting a business arrangement. Instead, I got the love of my life. He looked down at her with eyes full of wonder. Amara taught me that the strongest people aren't those who never need help. They're those who help others despite their own struggles. He paused, emotion thickening his voice. She also taught me that love isn't about rescuing someone or being rescued. It's about choosing each other every day, especially when it's hard. The applause was thunderous, but Amara barely heard it. She was lost in Lucas's eyes, in the promise of their future, in the certainty that they'd found something worth fighting for. Later, as they swayed together during their first dance as a truly married couple, she pressed close to his ear. I have a surprise for you. What kind of surprise? She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. The kind that changes everything. He went perfectly still. Are you? 3 weeks. I wanted to wait until today to tell you. Joy exploded across his face like sunrise. He spun her around right there on the dance floor, both of them laughing with pure happiness. We're having a baby, he said, as if testing how the words felt. We are. A baby who'll never know what it's like to be bought or sold or arranged. She smiled through happy tears. A baby who'll only know what it's like to be wanted. What's the difference between obligation and choice? Between duty and desire? Between arrangement and true love? Tell me in the comments what real partnership means to you, because this couple had just proven that the strongest foundations are built on truth, not convenience. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and celebration. But the best part came later, in their honeymoon suite, when Lucas made love to her with the reverence of a man who'd been given everything he'd ever wanted. Our child is going to be so loved, he whispered against her skin as they moved together in perfect harmony. Our child is going to change the world, she replied, arching beneath him as pleasure built between them. Just like their mother did. They celebrated their new beginning and new life with passion that burned away every shadow of their difficult past. When she called his name in ecstasy, it was with the voice of a woman who knew exactly where she belonged. I love you, she said afterward, curled against his chest while his hand rested protectively on her stomach. I love you both, he replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. 6 months later, the Choice Foundation opened its doors in downtown Atlanta, helping other victims of forced marriages and family manipulation. A year after that, little Sarah Whitford was born, a baby who would grow up knowing only love, choice, and the security that comes from parents who chose each other freely. And if you ever doubted that real love can grow from the most impossible circumstances, just remember Amara and Lucas. 2 people who were forced together by lies, but chose to stay together for truth. If this story of love conquering manipulation touched your heart, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories about finding real love in impossible circumstances. Comment below, what would you have done in Amara's shoes? Would you have stayed and fought, or would you have run? And remember, the strongest love isn't the one that comes easily, but the one you choose to fight for every single day.